Hello, we are here today with Sepideh Farsi to talk about a film, The Siren. So hello, Sepideh, and thank you for agreeing to answer my questions today. First of all, could you tell us in a few words what the story is about?
The story is about a very important episode of the Iraq-Iran war. It starts at 1980, takes place in a southern city of Iran called Abadan, which was the first place to be attacked by the Iraqis. And it's the way how one can be resilient in wartime from the point of view of a teenager, Omid. Omid is the main character of the film. His name means hope in Persian. And that's the age I had when the war started. And my goal was to show, well, to give a very personal view of this important episode. But it's not a war film. It's more how you find yourself in a war context as a teenager and how you resist your own way.
Okay, even though you've made many films in the past, whether feature like live action or documentaries, The Siren is your first animation film. Why did you decide to make it as an animation film?
It was, I knew from the beginning that it would not be I'm sorry about the cat. She wants to participate.
She's welcome.
Yes. It was, I knew I could not reconstruct or reconstitute that epoch and Abadan city and that part of the Iranian history in a live action movie, because it would be then a very, very heavy production and not the type of film that I'm at ease with, not the kind of cinema that I like. And it would be next to impossible to rebuild that period, because Abadan has changed so much since the war, and that era, it was just a year and a half after the revolution, 79, February 79, and then we are in September 80. So the country is still very much between two eras, and all of that is gone, long gone. And so I knew, and plus the animation gives you the necessary distance to show some very harsh things, but in a different way. So it was clear for me that I wanted to do an animation, but it was a challenge, of course, because it was my first and a feature that too pretty, ambitious and heavy duty in terms of all the assets and the characters, number of characters and all. But yeah, that's how it happened.
Yeah, you just said it was a challenge. Do you think it's a challenge you might be happy to take on again in the future?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
When I finished it, actually, I said never again, But last year, as we were showing the film in Berlin, I had the idea of doing an animation, filmmaking animation about my own life. And
Oh, wow.
I think that, again, is a very appropriate medium for, that meaning my life, the first half in Iran, the second half in France after my exile, and how I started making films and all that. So again, it talks about a part of the history of Iran, which is related to my own life, but 60s, 70s, 80s, that is very difficult to, to show in live action, a different way of, I think animation allows you more fantasy, more, well, magic, and at the same time, you can be realistic and have more possibilities of narrative possibilities in animation. So I'm doing a graphic novel and parallelly an animation project on my own life. That's
nice, exciting. So the film is beautiful and impressive in many ways, but the first striking element of it is that there's a limited palette of very vivid, striking colors. Could you tell us a bit more about this choice and the visual aspect of the film in general?
Sure. The graphic author and the art director Zaven Najjar had a very prominent part in the development of the style, of course. And in fact, the meeting between us was a very important moment for the development of the film, it was quickly very clear for me and for him as well that it was going to be a very intense collaboration. So at some point I asked him to reduce the color palette, and we agreed. I mean, his proposition was this, to kind of eliminate some colors in order to underline the besieged cities aspect, meaning the surrounded city, the lack of freedom of movement, lack of certain things, and indirectly, because the color palette is something that the viewer sees and feels, but in a very how do you say it, unconscious way. At least for some time, and then you realize as a viewer that there are things missing, but it takes time to realize why you have that feeling. So this was our idea, to translate the war and the shrunkenness of the space, because it was a besieged city. And so for most of the film, it's that way, and until the very end. I'm not going to say what happens at the end, but there we have an explosion of colors. We have more vivid colors, and we go towards the full spectrum.
All right. So even though the topic of the film is a difficult one, that sometimes some scenes show the worst of what war can bring. There's also a lot of beauty throughout the film, like this scene where a missile looks like a sunset, but there's also like the carpets, the tiles, all the architectural elements, detail that are so beautiful. How come beauty has such a big space in a film with such a difficult topic?
I don't believe that in order to show difficult topics, you have to make them ugly. It's because life continues even during the war, and beauty is always there, even if there is a harsh reality. So the idea was to, first of all, depict that Iran, that part of my country, that era, and with all the elements that are relevant, architectural, cultural, visual elements that like take the spectator in, because it is at the same time a fiction, but also a very realistic treatment of visual elements, though it is an animation. So everything would go through Zaven's style, through that pipe, our pipe, and then be translated in the grammar that we had fixed. But yes, it was part of our goal to not to make things, ugly just for the sake of making them ugly because it was a war context, and to be very accurate historically. I mean, I did a tremendous amount of research, and I really spoon-fed all of the team, and first of all Zaven, of course, because apart from the screenplay writer Javad Javaheri, who's Iranian, the rest of the crew and the team, none of them, hardly any, there were 2 people in the team who were Iranians, but the rest of them were non-Iranian. So I had to really make them, give them the required material so that they could translate it into designs and drawings. And I think we made a pretty decent job, because when Iranians watch the film, and even people from Abadan, the reaction is very positive. So I believe we succeeded in creating that atmosphere,
Okay. Another point I wanted to discuss with you is sorry, is so there is a lot of the traditional Iranian world elements along with the pop culture all the way throughout the film. So the film opens on a traditional Iranian wedding with traditional music and animal sacrifice, but there's also, we see or we hear like the Goldorak or Gwendizer, depending on where we are, theme. Yes. There's also the brands Fujifilm, Pepsi Cola, this blonde lady on the ice cream boxes. So the cohabitation of pop culture and traditional culture is very strong. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, that was also part of the thing, because during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, until the revolution and early years of the revolution, there was also always a very strong presence of or a very strong link between the Iranian society and the Western society in terms of icons and, things, film, music, advertisement and all, graphic design. There were many exchanges, meaning Iranians were inspired, and there was always this mixture between the Iranian traditions, visual traditions, which are very strong, in terms of architecture, miniature, the design style, and the calligraphy, the Iranian calligraphy, but always with a modern, or with an eye towards a gaze towards outside. So I wanted to keep this mixture and transcribe it in the film. This was one part of to show also this duality in the Iranian society, which is at the same time traditional and also very open towards the outside world.
And you said you were the age when you left Iran, the age of the main character. Is it also two kind of cultures you were attracted to, and maybe one pulling the other? And was it something important at that age when you are about 15, 14?
Yes, of course. No, I didn't leave Iran then. I was Omid's age when the war started, and then I left 4 years later. So I spent half of the war in Iran, and then I left because of political reasons. I had to leave Iran to be able to study, because I was blacklisted because of my activities in high school, dissident activities, couldn't study, I went to jail. I mean, but anyway, I think, yes, I was exposed at the same time to Western classical music. For instance, I was playing piano, and also traditional Iranian music. At the same time, I mean, I was learning like English and Persian both at school. So I had these right to left writing in Persian, and left to right writing in English, or learning English. And I think it was part of it depends on the families, of course, and your upbringing and your cultural context. But in my family, yes, we were, and many families, I'm not an exception. We were exposed to both, cultures. And so Goldorak, for instance, that was a thing, an idea to show also the unity of, I mean, something that can unite people, two people who are in war, actually. Because doing research, I found out that it was broadcasted at that point in Iraqi TV, and Iranians didn't have access in the rest of the country, but in Abadan, because it's very close to the border, they could watch Iraqi TV, and so that's what they would watch. And I was, and also some Indian Bollywood films, I was told that they were, and I was imagining that there would be a moment when the war would stop and everybody was watching the same film, and which I think it did happen. And I just wanted to make a little point about the beginning. It's not a marriage, it's a depossession ceremony, a ritual, which is called Zar. And the character who's being depossessed, or who's possessed by evil spirits, and he's being depossessed. I just want to attract, I'm not going to say who he is, but the viewers will see him again. He's a key character. So this was also the point of making this this ceremony, putting it at the beginning of the film to kind of anchor, the whole action until we find him again.
Okay. So we mentioned the music of Goldorak, traditional music. The music is actually a very strong aspect of the film. It's like really omnipresent. Some of it has been made by Eric Truffaz. Could you tell us a bit more about the music in the film?
Yes. Yes, part of it was done by Eric, beautifully composed. And actually, Siren was going to be our first collaboration, but the film took so long that in the middle, I made another fiction film, and he made the music for that one. So it became our second collaboration indeed. But there's also traditional, or well, a fusion of traditional and jazz music. I mean, composed by an Iranian musician who also lives in exile in France, called Saeed Shambezadeh. And that was pre-existing music. It was not originally composed for the film, but it is also very, very important, because he's from the south of Iran. He's from Abadan, and it has the local elements, melodic elements, and um, structure of that part, that culture. And so it was very, I mean, right from the pilot, when we were making the teaser and sorry, pilot teaser, I mean, and also the all the way through the storyboard, we were working with that Shambhazadeh's music. So that, and then some. I'm sorry, my cat really wants to be in the interview. Yeah, when you will watch the film, I think the viewers will be reminded of my cat. But yes, and there are some cult songs also. There's a song by Farhad, a song by Elahe, I mean, the diva. There are some, I think this musical patchwork was important. It was another way of translating the complexity of the Iranian society through music, you know, the cohabitation of different styles of music.
Yeah, okay. So there are many characters in the film, many of them are men, but there's two women characters, Sheida and her daughter Paris, who in a way seems like they are the one leading. They are the one who take the story where it goes. Do you see a connection between Sheida Paris and the bravery of women in Iran today?
There must be one. It was not a conscious one. Actually, the name of Sheida has changed and it is Elahe. I'm just saying it because Elahe is a real singer who did have to stop singing after the revolution and who passed away. And so her music is the real music of Elahe. And yes, it was a decision to show these very strong women in the man's world, because the war was, I was asked this question several times, why is the main character a boy and not a girl? I said, because boys were more subject to the pressure of going to war and fighting than girls or than women. But yes, Elahe and her daughter Pari are very strong characters, and they really lead the story, as you rightly mentioned. And then there are the other two characters, Omid's mother, who's, despite being kind of absent from after a certain point, is still very present somehow because of all the beginning and all the emotional impact. And then there is this other young woman who works with the corpses in the morgue and all. So there are strong characters, women characters. When I was making the film, when we wrote the script, there was no, I mean, tangible trace of the uprisings that happened in 2022. But women's struggle has been going on in Iran since 79, in fact. It never stopped. It's just ups and downs. So I guess having strong women characters is part of, you know, our lives in Iran. It's just the way it is. Women keep resisting, so.
Yeah. Okay. So my last question is going to be to ask you, is there anything in particular you'd like to say to the people who are going to see your film?
When I was making this film, and throughout the 8.5 years that it took, almost as long as the war actually, to make the film, the question or the possibility of being so much involved in the war or so close to the war seemed very remote and, you know, unthinkable. But ever since the film is finished and is going around the world, unfortunately, the whole world, Europe on one side, and especially the Middle East, is really involved in terrible atrocities and wars. And I keep thinking specifically about the Palestinians who, since last year, are really enduring horrible things. And now, I mean, Lebanon, and eventually, I hope not, but Iran is also threatened, and the provocations, of course. I'm not talking about, I'm not excluding the provocations. I'm just, my main point is that it's very strange for me to present this film, which is thought of when we were making it, more in terms of peace and serenity in a context of war, exactly, and lack of hope now for certain populations, civilians who are stuck. This thing of reading about people who are stuck in a city, I lived this 40 years ago, but I didn't think that today, when I was going to show the film, it would be a reality in some parts of the world. So this is a very strange thing. And I want to say that I've been through this personally in a modest way, but saying that even when we think in a historical context that we can't do anything, we can always do something. It's really, that was one of the points of the film. Omid shows it, that you can always make a choice. You can always do it your own way, find your own way of expressing things, or not doing things, or doing other things and resisting. This resilience, despite everything, despite all the odds, I think is something that we really try to show in the film, and I hope it, it comes out and the message is conveyed.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Sepideh.